Hello everyone, and welcome to our Thursday weekly video devotions. Isn't it kind of funny that when we're told not to do something, that's exactly what we want to go and do? This phenomenon is so common, it's even included in Disney movies. For example, in the movie Beauty and the Beast, Beast tells Belle not to go explore the West Wing in his castle. But then that's exactly what Belle goes and does. Similarly, in the movie Lion King, Simba is told not to go and visit the elephant graveyard. But then that's exactly what he goes and does. We see this phenomenon happen with little kids all the time. We tell a little kid, don't touch that, but then all of a sudden they're filled with this almost irresistible desire to go and touch the forbidden object. Now, these examples are humorous, but they illustrate a dark truth about our sinful nature and God's law. The Apostle Paul says this in Romans chapter 7. He says, "For I would not have known what coveting really was if the law had not said, 'You shall not covet.' But sin, seizing the opportunity afforded by the commandment, produced in me every kind of coveting." So first, the Apostle Paul talks about the law. That's God's law, His will for our lives. And the example from God's law he picks is what the 9th and 10th commandment talk about. You shall not covet. And the Apostle Paul says that his sin took that commandment and kind of twisted it. It's like his sinful nature said, oh, God says you shall not covet? Well, that's exactly what we are going to go and do. And so, it produced all sorts of covetous desires in him. We see this truth at work in us as well. God's law says, you shall not murder. And so our sinful nature produces in us all kinds of violent and hateful desires. God's law says, you shall not commit adultery. And so our sinful nature produces in us all kind of lustful and perverse desires. God's law says, you shall not steal. And so our sinful nature produces greed. All throughout Romans chapter 7, the Apostle Paul talks about the terribleness of our sinful nature and God's law and how our sinful nature twists God's law. He talks about it until finally at the end he's led to exclaim this with despair. What a wretched man I am! Who will rescue me from this body that is subject to death? Paul recognized that because of his sinful nature, he had broken God's law and deserved death. But with almost the same breath, Paul switches from despair to joy. In the very next verse, Paul says this, "Thanks be to God who delivers me through Jesus Christ our Lord." Even though Paul knew he was subject to sin, had broken God's law, and deserved death, he also knew he had someone who delivered him from all that, Jesus Christ the Lord. And these same truths apply to us. We have broken God's law and deserved death, but we too have a deliverer, Jesus Christ the Lord. After discussing sin in Romans chapter 7, the Apostle Paul goes on to trumpet the wonders of salvation in Romans chapter 8. For the next few weeks in these video devotions, we're going to be examining the awesomeness of salvation as we go through Romans chapter 8. Join us next week for our video devotion. Until then, remember that you have someone who delivers you from your sin. Jesus Christ, the righteous one.